welcome everybody to today's webinar. My name is Bob Stewart, and we're going to talk about a couple, it's really three kind of primary drip marketing tools that we think every agent should have in their business. And it's really the tools that on the Ben Kinney team, and I'm going to represent the Ben Kinney team today. I spend a lot of time working with their 21 expansion teams across the country, really putting these tools into practice in their business. And when we think about all of our businesses kind of at large, right, we're all doing these things. We're all looking to generate additional kind of people for our database, additional prospects, clients, leads, right? We capture those things somehow. And not all those people that we capture into our world are ready to buy today, right? In fact, it's pretty rare. The vast majority of your database is generally in this middle slice right here where we're trying to nurture them, okay? It's very rare somebody comes to my website today and says, I want to go see that house tomorrow, and puts an offer in on that house, right? It's very rare that you have a prospect in your database that's thinking about selling. They say, hey, I want to sell right now, Ben Kinney, please come list my house, right? So we're always trying to figure out, like, how do we nurture people in our database so that we get them to the right side here, which is we end up doing a deal with them, and then we can hopefully turn them into a past client, get referrals from them, right? Do repeat business with them. This nurture aspect is very important. Now, if you're a Brivity customer, this is how we kind of see our world, right? And it all starts once they get into the CRM. All that stuff on the left-hand side of this page, the traffic, the content and messaging that we put in front of them, the tools that we have to capture their information and essentially make them a prospect in our database that we can nurture, right? And in Brivity, we do this in three ways. And if you guys have ever seen Ben Kinney's listing presentation or seen him give his listing presentation, and that'll be a class that we do here at some point, well, he's got this really simple, it's like the 15-second listing presentation, which is essentially when he goes in, and they do this before, they'll sit down and say, besides price, is there anything else that we need to discuss before we have you guys sign the paperwork? And if somebody already knew they were going to list with Ben, like a lot of times doing that big long listing presentation is useless if you could just ask them up front, like, hey, as long as we can figure the price out, you're going to list with us, right? So I want to kind of give you guys that for this call, right? If you are using auto plans right now, if you have plans set up that fire on your leads, that trigger automatically when leads come into your world, that have a really solid series of texts that go out, emails that go out, and tasks that get assigned for your agents, high five, you've got one of the three tackled. If you have all of your buyer prospects, or really anybody in your database that you would consider a buyer prospect, set up on listing alerts, high five, you've got the second part nailed. And then if you've got all of your sphere, your past clients, and your seller prospects set up to get market reports or market data from you as an indication to them of what's happening in the area right around their house, right? What's that real estate activity right around their house? Because that's the most reflective of their home's own value is going to be what's selling around them, what's going pending around them, what's active around them. If you've got that in play as a third thing, high five, like you've got all three things we're going to talk about today, right? You could do the quick and dirty. You can leave now. Now, if you're looking for some advice on what your auto plans look like, who should I be setting listing alerts up on, what should they look like, market, that's what we're going to dive into today, okay? Before we get in here, let's talk about, at least in Brivity, and look, again, this could be your own system. You want to have something that operates like this, but we want to have a system that allows us to get all of our leads from no matter where they're coming from into one location. That's what Brivity does, right? We can take your leads from your Brivity products or from Zillow via an API, right? We can take leads from realtor.com via email parsing. We can take leads from some of these other sources via something like Zapier, which connects different systems on the internet. But we get them all into one place. Once we have them in one place, we can route those leads then to the appropriate person based on some criteria of that lead. Where did the lead come from, right? Where were they looking? So it's a Zillow lead that was looking in Seattle, right? I can get that lead to the appropriate person on my team that can field that lead. And I might say a Zillow lead in Seattle looking at a house over $1 million is going to go to this agent, and a Zillow lead looking in Seattle under $1 million is going to go to this other agent. I could have time of day, right? Every Monday, all our leads go to Mitchell. On Tuesday, all our leads go to Mary. Right? So we can route these leads around. Now, once they get routed to the agent, obviously we're going to notify the agent, hey, you've got a new lead. But what happens next in a really high-performing business who realizes that the speed that I can respond to somebody once they make an inquiry to me is paramount in my ability to convert them into my client? We're going to apply an auto plan to these people. So this is kind of the flow, right? We're going to apply a plan that basically starts the communication and tells the agent now what they need to do in order for that communication to hit its mark, right? To ultimately turn them from just a lead that came to our website into a buyer or a seller prospect with us. So somebody's got their mic on. If everybody just make sure your mics are muted. So automate your lead follow-up and then set up your lead conversion on autopilot. This is auto plans, and this is the first kind of drip marketing system that we want to address today. And auto plans can potentially be, oh man. Somebody has their mic on, and you're killing me here, man. Who is it? This person. All right, sorry you guys. I had to go out and get that because I just was having a hard time there. And I've apparently lost my screen now. Let's try this again. All right. Dave can cut that out on the recording. All right, so we've got these auto plans. Let me talk to you for a second just about the concept of an auto plan. So what it's going to do is going to trigger automatically, and it's going to include things like tasks for the agent to call or to send a piece of physical mail or to go off and try to find that person on Facebook. We're going to have a series of tasks that an agent's going to accomplish. We're also going to have text messages. And guys, in our business today, this element, right, our ability to get text messages out to consumers in a very short amount of time, but also to have those text messages be that thing that follows up with them over, let's say, the first 10 or 12 days that they became a lead in our world is just paramount to our ability to convert leads. It's become, obviously we want to get them on the phone, right? We know we're never going to sell somebody a house, and it's really hard to convert somebody without making phone calls. But text messages are, in a lot of our scenarios, a lot of our leads from a lot of different places, a lot of different sources, text messages are that primary way we start the conversation with them. Okay? If you guys are anything like me, emails is going to be another thing that these plans include. If you're anything like me, like even my phone today, I rarely answer phone calls from numbers I don't know, right? If the number's not in my phone, it's pretty rare that I'm going to answer. I'm going to get their voicemail. Maybe I listen to their voicemail. Maybe I don't. If I don't know that number, right? Emails, like my email, I've got 20,000 unopens or something ridiculous, right? And a lot of you guys are probably like that. But text message for a lot of us is kind of this bastion still where most of us don't have, unless you're like Ben Kinney and you get 500 text messages a day, like most of us don't have unanswered text messages. Most of us see, and most of us respond to text messages that come to our cell phone, right? So our auto plans are going to include those, and it's going to be a big deal. Now, in our world, right, and hopefully in whatever world you live in today, but in the Brivity world, these plans can be triggered automatically based on these factors, right? The source, the intent, the status of the lead, and then potentially a tag if there was like a tag that came in with the lead. Okay, so let's think about this for a second. That means we could have a plan set up for our Zillow buyer leads. And that plan could have different wording, different text messages, different things we're trying to say and do to convert that person than if a lead came in from us that was a seller lead from Zillow. right? A buyer lead from our website could be treated different than a seller lead from our website. That's the intent. So a combination of these different kind of elements to trigger plans can make sure we get the right plan with the right wording fired off on the right people. Like when we build plans on our team, let's say we're building a plan to convert our internet leads, and we call that the 10 days of pain on Ben's teams. When we build the 10 days of pain, we build kind of a baseline for the 10 days of pain. And we say no matter where they come from Zillow, Realtor.com, our own website, if they're a Dave Ramsey lead that we got, if they came from our listings to leads, they came from Facebook, like if they're an internet lead, right, we're going to apply the 10 days of pain. But we're going to go in and customize that for each of the different sources. So we're going to have a Zillow 10 days of pain plan that triggers on leads with a source of Zillow. We're going to have a website 10 days of pain plan that triggers, at least in our world, when a lead comes in with a source of Brivity IDX coming from our website. We are going to have a different plan. And it's the same plan. We just make a copy of it. And then, in that first text message where it would have said, hey, I saw that you were on Zillow. I'm Zillow's premier agent, preferred agent, whatever you want to say, right? If it was for my website, that first text would say, hey, you were on my website, bobstewart.com. If the lead came from Dave Ramsey, right, that first text would say, hey, I saw that you just reached out to me through Dave Ramsey. I'm Dave Ramsey's preferred real estate agent, right? So we can, based on the ability to trigger these plans on different things, we can go in and edit these plans to make them very specific to the customer's query. And the more specific we can make these, they are generic, right? We have to make them such that, if we had 100 leads that came from Zillow, that plan kind of applies to all 100 of them. But let's get it as specific as we can around things like source or intent, right? Maybe we run some campaigns on Facebook and we want to put a specific tag on that particular campaign. And we know that advertising was saying something like, get a list of the 10 best price properties in Bellingham, right? Well, we tag that landing page so that when somebody came to our Facebook ad and registered, they'd come in with that tag of, 10 best price properties. And then we could build a plan that fired off of any leads that have that tag on it. So there's a lot of kind of ways we can get these plans started. And we want to get to the point where our plans are being applied on our new leads automatically. Okay, so which ones should I set up first? If you're a Brivity client, I mean, this applies if you are or you aren't. If you've got, a Boomtown, Commissions Inc., Conversion, there's a lot of other really great systems out there, you guys, that have these same capabilities, right? The ability for you to build these plans out, lead comes in, and I can automatically, or at the very least, I can get in there and manually apply the plan, the minute I'm able to. But if you're a Brivity client, this would be the order I would go in. I would get plans built out for my website buyer leads, right? My IDX leads. I'd get a plan for my open house leads, at least if you guys are doing open houses in your business. I'd have a plan for my Quickly leads. If you're not a Brivity client, Quickly is a service where we can put a text code out and people can text in to get information about our listings. We're going to have a plan set up for Quickly leads. If people are requesting the value of their home, either on our valuation websites or they're coming to our seller or our IDX website and they're asking for a valuation, right? We're going to have a plan that applies for those people. And then I'd focus on, what are my number one and number two, maybe my top one or two, maybe three outside sources of leads, right? Anywhere where I've got, say, more than 10, 12 leads a month coming in from, ultimately, I want to get a plan in place that directly addresses that type of a lead, right? In the beginning, I might make a very generic one that didn't say anything like Zillow or you came from my website, right? Just, hey, you were asking about a property on the internet, right? And I could apply that to those other sources until I got in there and drilled it down and really made those things specific to what that source is, right? So Zillow, Realtor.com, Dave Ramsey, your old website, whatever those places for you are, and they're different for all of you guys. All right, so let's go in and talk about these plans for a second. And I want these texts that I'm going to show you, the way that we build our plans out, okay, is we're always going to send short, concise questions, statements, or offers. Everything we send is short and concise, and then it has a statement, an offer, or a question. And on the very first day, we always have 3 to 4 texts that kick off that series. Sometime during that day, we will also send an email. It will generally be after all of the texts have gone out. There'll be an email that kind of recaps the text. We don't send different messages in the texts and the emails. We keep the messages very similar. In the emails, we give ourselves a little bit of extra room to basically bullet point out a little bit of kind of context around the text. So for example, if our second text said, hey, did you guys want to set up a tour of the inside of that property that you texted about? Let's say they're a quickly lead. Our second text on a quickly lead always is an ancillary ask or offer. So that ancillary offer might be, hey, did you guys want to set up a private tour of the inside of that home? Right? An email later that was going to go out would present that same offer. It might have bullet points that said something like, I'm available today at 6 o'clock, tomorrow at 8 a.m., or Friday at 2. Which one works best for you? Right? We might add a little bit to that email, but we're not trying to think up something totally different to send them in an email than to what we send them in a text. We're going to keep that messaging very similar because we don't care where they see it. I just want them to see it. So on this first day, we're going to try to make a call to our leads. And so we're going to set a task on that first day, kind of right away, for the agent to make a call. But that requires that the agent be in a position to make that call, and they're not always in a position to make that call. So we have a series of 3 text messages that go out, and the first text message is going to go out somewhere between 3 and 5 minutes from when that person made the inquiry. So they're on our website, they fill out a form, they're looking at a listing, they say, I like this listing, and they fill that form out. The lead now comes in from our website. We're going to address that query directly, right? It's going to say something like, what did I do there? This is my away game again, right? I'm on my away game here. There it is. So it's going to say something like, hi, and then we use these things called placeholders, recipient first name. So if they were on our website and they typed in their name as, Jimmy Smith, the text is going to say, hi, Jimmy. I saw you stop by my real estate website. If you were going to buy, where would you want to live? We address the query directly. Hi, Jimmy. I saw you were on Zillow looking at a property. I'm Zillow's preferred agent. If you were going to buy, where would you want to live? And then we sign it with Jolene, Ben Kinney Real Estate Team. We only sign the first text with our name. After that, we just let the text go, right? Don't be my dad, my wife's dad. They always sign their text with dad or Gary. I'm like, yeah, Gary, I know, man. We sign the first one because they don't know who we are. We don't sign after that, right? So the first text is going to address the specific query. If this was a quick lead text, we wouldn't use recipient first name because we know, if you guys don't know what quick lead, we know we just get a cell phone number. We never get their name when we get that kind of a lead. So we wouldn't be able to build a plan that used this placeholder for recipient first name for quick lead. We'd have to just say, hey, how you doing? I saw you texted about one of my listings. Did you have any specific questions about that property? First text, address the query. And think about in there, when we're building these plans, like we want to make that plan apply to whoever that person is that's going to get applied to. So if it's a Zillow plan, we're going to address Zillow. If it's coming from our website, we're going to address our website. If it's a text lead, we're going to say, hey, you texted about one of our listings, okay? We want it to feel as authentic and real as possible, as if we sat down and sent it. So our second text is always an ancillary ask or offer. And this text is going to go, depending on what the scenario is, somewhere between 5 minutes after the first text or up to an hour after the first text. That second text will go, it's an ancillary ask or offer, something related to the first thing that we talked to them about. offering or asking them something else? Are you looking to live in a new home, sell, or maybe invest in a rental? Did you want to set up a private tour of any of the homes you've seen today? Right? That might be, if I was going to do that one as my second text, let's say on my website leads, I might not send it, say I sent the first one 3 minutes after they registered. I might wait an hour to send that one, that second text we see there, as the second text in my series. And the reason is, if I send it 5 minutes later, they've now been on my website 10 minutes. That might not have been enough time for them to see enough houses to know which ones they actually wanted to go view, right? So on a website lead, I might give them an hour before I said, did you guys want to set up a private tour of any of the homes you've seen today on my site? If this is a quickly lead, if this is like, this came from our sign, right? Our quickly leads generally come because somebody drove by one of our signs and said, ooh, I wonder how much this house is, what's this listed for? Let me see the photos of the inside of this thing. That first text is going to go out 3 minutes later. Hey, I saw you texted about one of my listings. Did you guys have any specific questions about that property? 5 to 7 minutes later, I may send the text message that says, did you guys want to set up a private tour of that home that you texted about? Right, so when I know where my stuff is coming from, I can tailor the duration, how long these things wait, how long before they go out, specifically what do they say based on where that person came from. But I'm always going to have that second text on the first day, whether it be 5 minutes after the first text, whether it be an hour after the first text. Now, the way our plans work on Brivity, and it's similar on a lot of these other systems, is the plan will pause if they reply to the first text message. So if the point of a plan like this is to get them into communication with you. It's not to get them all the way down to where they're wanting to make an offer, right? Like that point where they reply. So let's say they reply to the first text, the second one's not going to go out. As an agent, you have to be able to step in now, right, to whatever they reply and move that conversation along. But if they don't reply to the first one, this second one will go out. Now, our third text, we call this guilt. Our third text is always some form of guilt, which is basically to say, hey, I've sent you 2 texts already, like, don't ignore me, right? So we do something that's like, hey, this is recipient first name, right? So if they'd come from our website, it'd say, hey, this is Jimmy, right? I hope I don't have the wrong number. And we just put that out into the atmosphere because there's a large percentage of the population that actually feels bad if they think that they've ignored somebody, right? So they might be able to ignore that first one. They might be able to ignore that second one. But when we put a little bit of guilt into the world, I'm pleasantly surprised at how many people respond to this one, right? If that was on a quickly lead or a lead where we didn't always know, like Zillow, I wouldn't use recipient first name on my Zillow leads because sometimes Zillow leads come in. You guys have seen this with like their Zillow username. So it'd be weird if it was like, hey, this is Pretty Sunshine Girl 85, right? That's kind of weird, right? So I might say, hey, you were on Zillow earlier, right? I hope I don't have the wrong number. But it's that idea of guilt. This is my third time trying to reach you in somewhere between, 15 or 20 minutes and maybe an hour and a half if one of my texts kind of waited a little bit longer. But if they'd replied to the first 2, this one doesn't go, right? It's on you now, the agent, to figure out what to say. So the reason on the Ben Kinney team that we do the 10 days of pain, there's something that we know, and we learned this from the National Association of Realtors does a home buyer and seller survey every year. And one of the things that we kind of picked up out of that in the past is the idea that the average consumer spends somewhere in the neighborhood of about 9 months on the internet, kind of looking at properties before they actually start to work with an agent, before they meet that agent the first time and start going to see houses. Okay. Again, we said this earlier, very rare somebody just hops on the internet today and goes, we're going to buy a house tomorrow. And it's like they just started today, right? That doesn't happen. But the other thing we've learned from that NAR home buyer and seller survey is the average consumer, even though they don't do something for 9 months, they actually pick the agent they're going to work with in the first 10 days. And sometimes we don't even know they picked us. They might have said to themselves, I'm going to use Ben. this guy he texted me a couple times that first day. He's texted me, I'm not ready, so I'm not going to respond to him yet. I don't know him, so I don't really feel that bad that I'm not responding. But man, he started sending me listings. Like, I'm going to use him. Now, we don't know that, right? So if Ben stopped after the third day of trying to follow up with them, if he'd never set listing alerts up, right, he could get himself in a position where they reconsider. They pick somebody else. They pick another agent that did a better job of following up with them in that first 10 days. But we are very aggressive in the first 10 days, and we have become heavily aggressive with text messages. Now, a lot of these things, right, I wouldn't use a guilt email like this, but I could guilt text them. I wouldn't say the same thing in an email. Our first day email may just say, hey, you were on our website. Let me know if you got any extra questions about a property that you saw, or if you'd like to set up a private tour, I'm available at A, B, and C. So here's some of the other text we use between days 2 and 12. And it used to just be 10 days. We've extended it a little bit because of the very last text that I'll show you guys here. We try to avoid giving them the answer to say yes, or the option to say yes or no, right? We try to work in elements where we're saying basically pick something. My wife's in sales, and she's been like, for the last day, that they did this thing where they sent out these sales emails that had option A, B, or C. And she's like, I'm getting 5 times the response I've ever gotten from anything else simply by giving people 3 options to pick. This one gets to, like, what do you have as some kind of a differentiator, right? This is an actual text that the Ben Kinney teams send out. And they're able to send this out for a couple of reasons. One is they've got something inside of Keller Williams, which is what Ben's company, that's their brokerage affiliation, called the 0+ loan. Ben also, in some of his locations, has his own mortgage business in those locations. So they're actually able to offer that same thing, like at their office in Bellingham, for example. But what is that thing that kind of sets you apart from other agents, right? And should I let them know about that as I'm trying to get them to be my client? We do that at some point during this text series. And guys, all these texts, it really doesn't matter, like, if this one goes on day 4 or day 6 or day 8. It's going to go at some point in the series. Okay, and when we tweak these things in our Zillow leads, we might go a little bit heavier up front with something like this. And we may do something different with our Dave Ramsey leads, right? Here's another one. This is very similar, right? We do this a little bit later in the series. This is after they've probably ignored 5, 6 text messages from us. Another text. And notice these are just very, very succinct, very short, and really just focused on one thing, which is almost what you have to do with text, right? We don't do text the same way a lot of people like to do email, but we don't do email that way either. We do email the same way we do text. Our email that went out kind of in conjunction with this, right? This text might go out at, on day 7 at 10:30 a.m. The email might go out later that night at 6 p.m. And we do it a little bit different. We send our, sorry, I shouldn't have said that. That was wrong. We try to send our texts the subsequent days. The first day's text, they go out based on when that person registered. So if they registered at noon, they're going to get the text at 12:05, 12:15, and 1:15, right? But the subsequent days after that, we can decide, like on day 3, what time do you want to send this text? We tend to send text in the evening, and then we follow up the next morning with that same email that kind of addresses that text we sent the previous evening or late afternoon. The reason we do that is because if you're at work, if you have a stressful job, or just you're at work and you get a text, that could add to like the stress level at the job that day. But most people tend to check their email at work. So we like that email to be there in the morning. So when they get into work, they're like, okay, let me check my email, see what, a lot of us do that, right? That email's there in the morning. The text isn't there until that evening, so that we're not kind of bombarding their workday again. That's just something we've decided to do because we tend to believe that people are more free to respond to their texts kind of late afternoon and in the evening, and they generally check their emails in the morning. This is one that this script right here, we use this a lot. People normally come to my open houses for one of two reasons. They're looking for that perfect home to buy for themselves, or they're thinking about selling and wondering what their own home might be worth. Which one are you? People generally go on Zillow for one of two reasons. They're looking for the perfect home for themselves, or they're thinking about selling and wondering what their own house might be worth. Which one are you? People generally come to my website for one of two reasons. People generally text on our signs for one of two reasons. This is I like this one. This is one that Jolene, who kind of runs the Ben Kinney expansion operation and runs the hub of the Ben Kinney team in Bellingham. She started putting this out because by the 6th or 7th text message, if somebody hasn't responded to you, they might feel a little bit bad about it, and that might be a reason why they never respond, right? They don't want to face that guilt of being like, oh, hey, yeah, I am interested in a $20,000 and I would like to sit down for coffee. Like, they might not respond to that because they've ignored the previous 6, right? So we just say, hey, I know you haven't responded to me yet, and I don't want you to feel bad about that. That's okay, right? Even if you're looking to buy or sell if you aren't looking to buy or sell in the near future, I'd love to help you build wealth through real estate one day. And we really focus on this idea that home ownership is a path to wealth for most people in the United States. And our agents are highly versed on having conversations of this nature with people. We know the tax benefits of real estate. We know things like accelerated depreciation on rental home. Like, our agents are highly equipped to have these conversations so we can make these offers to people, right? Your agents might be a little bit leery if somebody said, I want to build wealth through real estate. Please, when can we have coffee? All of a sudden, if I didn't know what to say to somebody, I can't use this text, right? Here's something we know about our buyers that a lot of people don't think about or factor in when you're doing lead conversion. We learned this a while ago. Most people live somewhere. And a high percentage of the people that are going to buy, well, not a high percent, 60, whatever the home ownership rate in the United States is, 64% of people who are going to buy something own the house they live in now. A high percentage of those people who own the house they have to sell that previous house. But a lot of us get so laser focused on buyers, converting this buyer, we forget to ask questions like, hey, do you own something right now? Like, maybe we can help you identify how much that house might be worth. Or maybe you'd like to get a report that shows you everything selling around that house, because you're not going to buy for 9 months. We know that. You just signed up today. But we can get you prepared to be ready to sell in 9 months and then turn around and find that place to buy. These really short ones. Did I drop the ball? That's all we send. A lot of us want to say, did I drop the ball? I hope that you've been getting my text message. We want to be very verbose with these things, right? Just, did I drop the ball? Again, this is a little bit of guilt here, right? We know we didn't drop the ball, but hey, how come you're not responding? Like, did I drop the ball? I love this one. This one gets a ton of response. Bob? So we do these in succession, right? This might be on day 8, and on day 9, we just say, Bob, what is the point? Go back, think, what is the point? We've got two kind of things that we're driving towards here. We're either driving towards just communication, right? Please respond. Or we're driving towards that appointment, right? So early on, we're driving towards that appointment. Would you guys like to see this place this afternoon or tomorrow? Later, they've ignored all that kind of let's get together stuff. Now we're just like, hey, just communicate with me, Bob. Okay, so we've got all that stuff. We've had emails that queued up. Now, throughout this plan, right, the agent has been calling. We have calls on day 1. On day 1, our agents are required to call 3 times. They have to call. They get a voicemail, they hang up. They call back. They get a voicemail, they hang up. They call back. On the 3rd call, they leave a message. We don't do that throughout the rest of the, we call them on day 3, day 4, day 6, day 9, day 10, right? We're going to get, over the course of all of this, we're going to get somewhere between 12 and 15 communication attempts into that lead. Here's why we do that. Last year, we looked at two of our teams, one in Austin and one in Vancouver. There are two kind of, at that point, they're just highly functioning, okay? We found that when we closed a transaction in 2018 with a client we did not previously know, or they weren't referred to us. So they weren't a past client, weren't referred to us, weren't somebody in our sphere. They basically were a lead. It could have been an open house lead, could have been a Zillow lead, could have been a website lead, could have been a Dave Ramsey lead, could have been a listings to leads lead, could have been a doesn't matter. It took us an average of 12 contact attempts to get them to reply the first time. And that's really messed up when you consider lots of them replied the first time or the second or the third text. Some of them didn't reply for 20, 24 attempts. Like, we have leads that we sold in 2018. They came a lead in 2015. We've been calling them once a month for 3 years. We've been sending them listing alerts for 3 years. Now we finish with this. Our plan finishes with this. I love texting, you hate responding. Some of our teams are a little bit more aggressive. Just wanted you to know I'll continue reaching out till I earn your business or hear something different about your situation. Some of our teams just get right to the point and say, I'm going to keep following up with you till you tell me to stop or we earn your business. Think about it. We've texted them 5, 6, 7 times, depending on how many of those different elements you wanted to use in that 10 days. We've emailed them just as many times because we always follow up the next morning with a similar email to the text we sent the day before. So let's say, and then we've called them 5 times, with 15 contact attempts here by day 12 when this text goes out. We believe, like, something like this, by the way, people respond to this, LOL, I've totally been ignoring you, I'm sorry, we're just not ready yet. Or, I'm sorry, we're just not ready, we didn't want to bother you. One of the things I would say about text, like as a team, that you really think about what are people saying. We never leave a text unresponded to. If somebody replies to us and says, I already have an agent, I can't tell you how often I see people just go, oh, they don't even respond. They don't say, thanks for letting me know. They don't say nothing. They basically say, I didn't know this person. They told me they have an agent. Screw this person. I'm done. I'm out of here. I'm on to the next person. We value our leads so much that if somebody says, I already have an agent, we say, that's awesome. What's their name? Maybe I know them. Or we say, oh, that's fantastic. Or do you have a buyer's agency agreement with that person? And if they say, what's that? Then we know they don't. We just say, that, hey, do you mind if we keep sending you listings? If you see anything you like, just let us know. Or show your own agent, right? But we're not just going to say nothing to somebody. So if they respond, even if we ask a question and they say no, like at some point there was a text that said, are you thinking about buying for yourself, or are you guys maybe thinking about investing in a rental? And people would respond, neither. And lots of agents would just, okay, well, I guess that person's never going to work with me, right? Our team would respond and say, oh, that's cool. People normally come to our website for 1 of 2 reasons. They're thinking about buying and trying to figure out and trying to find that perfect home, or they're thinking about selling. Does one of those describe you? So if the goal of these things is to get them to respond, never leave their responses unresponded to. Seems simple, but I see it so much, it drives me nuts. All right, that was number 1, right? Auto plans. We can trigger them automatically. They're designed to either get them to an appointment with us or get them into communication with us. That second drip nurture thing, targeted listing alerts, or maybe, like we'll talk about here in a second, not so targeted. Now, one of the things our listing alerts do, we're always trying to get them to say, raise their hand and go, I want to know what the house I live in today is worth. It's kind of shocking. Not many other companies do this. We send listings to people, but we never think to ourselves, 60% of these people own their own house, and a bunch of them are going to have to sell it before they buy the listings we're sending them. So let's ask them every time, hey, you want to know what your own house is worth? But listing alerts, guys, you guys have had these forever. I would contend me and my partners built one of the very first listing alert drip systems in like 2000. So these have been around we're approaching 20 years that listing alerts have been a thing, right? But here's, I look inside just as many agent CRMs as anybody in the United States every single day. And what I realize is most of you guys are not setting all of your buyer prospects up with listing alerts. You're waiting until they tell you exactly what they want. And that's a massive mistake. Every single buyer, prospect in your database should have a listing alert. Send them one until they tell you stop. Okay? So what are we gonna, like, what is their criteria gonna be? Well, what do we know about that lead? A lot of times you'll have some little bit of information, right? They looked at this one property on Zillow, or they looked at this one property on your IDX website, or these 5 properties, right? We're really, if we haven't talked to them, which is the majority of your leads, you don't talk to them that first day, and you want to get that listing alert in play on day 1. It is the best drip email marketing thing you can do as a real estate agent for a buyer prospect is send them new listings, right? This is not like, I'm not blowing anybody's doors off here. It's been around for 20 years. But I know for a fact there's almost every single person in here has somebody in their database as a buyer prospect, an old lead that doesn't have one of these things, which means they've never thought about you since the day they registered on your website. So where are they looking and how much are they looking for? Right? So if I had a Zillow lead that was looking in Seattle at $400,000 condo, what we do is we go plus or minus somewhere between 10 and 20%, kind of depending on what we know about the market. We want to get a search set up for them that's going to have new listings coming on almost every day. Right? So if they looked at a condo in Seattle at 400,000, I wouldn't set them up on condos in Seattle between 390 and 420. That's too narrow. Right? There may be days where there's no condos in Seattle between 390 and 420. I'd go at the minimum up and down 10%. So down 40,000, up 40,000, right? 360 to 440. And I might even go wider. Now, some of your leads, look, a bunch of you guys, you came to Brivity, for example, right? You brought leads over from an old system and you might not know anything about that lead. All the time, not all the time, occasionally on Ben's teams, agents will get out of business and we will buy their database. And a lot of times they've done a horrible job in like kind of managing the database. We don't know anything about these people, right? We don't know where the lead even came from or what they were thinking about. We just go out there, we just start setting them up on listing alerts. And we know if we do 1,000 of those, 1,000 people that were in some old agent's database, 3 of the respond, like 3 people are going to respond. They're just smoke coming out of their ears. It's in all caps. And they're like, don't ever email me again. Where did you get my email address? You know, and you just go, whatever, trash next. We don't care about that. If we never took a swing at any of those 1,000, we're not going to get any hits. We don't care about 1 jerk or 5 jerks, right? But 3 people will respond and say, hey, we're not looking. Like my mom's team do this in Tacoma, Washington. They do Tacoma 250 to 400,000. Just go on 1,000 leads, and you'll get 5 raging lunatics, right? But you also get 5 people that say, hey, we're not looking in Tacoma. We're actually looking in Lacey, or we're looking in Olympia, or we're looking in Lakewood, right? And you'll get people that say, hey, we can't afford 250. We're only approved to 180. And you'll get people that say, hey, we got 3 kids. Can you guys stop sending us stuff with less than 4 bedrooms? And some of them won't even say nothing. They'll just start coming back to your website and looking at listings. So something is better than nothing, right? Like every single buyer prospect, because here's the reality. If you're not sending them listing alerts today, they're not thinking about you. They just wash them out of the database. Just get rid of them. If they're a buyer prospect in your database without listing alerts, like why? They're just in the way. Okay, so you're all going to go out there, all your buyer prospects, you're going to set them up. Generic if we need to. If we know something about them, good, fine, go. By the way, we have a service for your Brivity clients called our white glove service. If you want to ask about it, we do we'll set up 1,000 listing alerts or 1,000 market reports or some combination of those for $500 for you. So you got a big database with a bunch of people where you're like, I know that I need to do this. We can help you. All right, so market reports. I tell a quick story. Do I have this here as a slide? Yeah. Oh, hey. Who's married? Like, just nod your head. I can't see you, but if you could see me, I'd be nodding my head. I'm here at Disneyland with my wife and our 2 young, beautiful children. I would not send my wife on a speed dating event. Would anybody here? Like, if you're nodding yes, I would. You're like a swinger. High five to you, man. To each their own, right? I wouldn't do that. And the reality is, if I did that, I send my wife out, and we're here in we live in Seattle, right? Send her out. She's gonna go meet like all these guys that work at Google, and they make lots of money, and they're really good looking, and they got big muscles, and right, like way better than me. Well, she'd probably find somebody great, but I don't want to do that. Like I want to keep my wife close, right? If you don't send your clients, your past clients, your sphere, information about what's selling around their house, you're sending them on a real estate speed dating event. Like they come home from work today. Okay, there's been this property out there. It's been listed. They know it's listed at 450. And then John drives by and today it's got a sold sign on it. John wants to know, did that sell for 430 or 470? Right? Like he's going to go home and he's going to get that info. And if he doesn't get it from you, real estate speed dating event, he's going to find an agent that's faster than you, sexier than you, has better marketing than you, sold more houses than you, right? If he's in Bellingham, they're going to find Ben Kinney. Don't do that, right? Like if you get out of today, especially if you're a client, or if you have a tool like this, market report tool, please set it up for your past clients. There it is, number one. Your sphere. Any seller prospects in your world, old valuation leads, people that came from Zillow and want to know how much their house is worth. But really, any homeowner in your database where I know their physical address and it's in my market, so I can send them actives, pendings, and solds because I have the access to that MLS data to do that. And if I have an email address for them, if I have those two things, physical address that's in my market and an email, market report. So when we set a report up, what a lot of people like to do is they say, okay, well, I'm going to do this for John and Patty. And John and Patty, they have a 4-bedroom house and it's 2,200 square feet. The lot size is X. It's got a 3-car garage. It was built in 1995. And they make the criteria so narrow that really, like, the only house like that in that area is John's house. And so there's no actives on the report. There's no pendings, there's no sold. Like, you have to make that thing generic enough that the first time you send the report to them, it should have 15 to 20 properties on that report. This is how my team, if you wanted to hire us, we don't know your market. We just set it up in a range with some criteria that gets me 15 to 20 properties the first time. And I know subsequently after that, next month, 2 weeks from now, when that next report goes out to them, it's going to have enough on there, right? They're going to continue to consistently get information from us, letting them know what's active around you guys right now. Who's trying to sell their house around you. Then we're going to show them who's pending, the yellows, right? Who's pending around us, who wanted to sell their house and somebody offered on it. They accepted the offer. And then who sold, who actually closed, right? That's a real comp for the value of our own home. Let me talk about these market reports on Brivity for a second and some of the ways that our agents are kind of utilizing these to make touches into their database. Once I have all my past clients in my sphere set up on these things, the thing to understand about a market report, at least a Brivity one, and other systems could work this way, could work differently, but when we send a market report, say we send it out, it got sent to me 2 weeks ago. That day, there was, 10 actives, 5 pendings, 5 solds. And I got it that day and I opened it and I saw those 10 and 5 and 5. And it's not going to come out to me. The agent says, I'm going to send it once a month. So that was 2 weeks ago it first came out, and it's not going to come out for 2 more weeks. But if I drove home today and I drove into my neighborhood and a house had a sold sign on it, and I'm like, ooh, I want to know. I could come back to that report that my agent Ben Kinney sent me 2 weeks ago. I just pull that report up, and whenever I pull that thing up, it's a live look at right that second. So if that property across the street was now sold in the MLS, I'd see it on that report. And so a cool thing that you can let people know is that the pendings on their report, they're going to go sold eventually, right? So if they see something that goes pending around them at a price where they're like, holy, I cannot believe Pat and Mary listed their house at $600,000, and holy crap, it's pending at $600,000. Like when I'm over here kind of looking at what my people are looking at, right? And I can see in the back of Brivity who looked at my report. I want to make sure they know what this report is. I want to call them and say, hey, listen, you see the people down the street have a pending at 600,000 on their house. Like we bought your guys 3 years ago for what? And they're pending. If that thing closes at 600, that's going to be an amazing comp. You guys should come back every couple of days and just keep checking, right? And it will, once it sells, it will show on there and we'll see what it actually sold for. Like, what a great way to just stay in touch. Because if you don't, guys, I promise you, they're going to get that information somewhere, right? So now what do you do? Well, if we have listing alerts going out, we can come back in every day and we can see who was the last person on my site, when were they last here. We can go in and see who's the last person to look at my market report. If we have auto plans set up, you're just going to start getting the responses, right? You're going to get the text messages back. I hope you know what to do at that point. You're going to get the email responses. Now you got to go in and make the calls as an agent and kind of do the work, right? But auto plans, listing alerts, and market reports are these things that we kind of have to build out and put in play, and then they just work. They just keep working, right? For a listing alerts, each new lead, set up a listing alert. And guess what? It's going to be 9 months until they do something. So let's spend that 9 months getting them properties, right? Let's spend the first 10 to 12 days aggressively trying to convert them into our client. We move to once a month communication after that, where we try to text or call once a month. But that listing alert's always there. It's always in the background, sending, trying to get them to reply. All right. If you're a Brivity client, please join Brivity Masterminds. Tons of great conversations happening in there. Sean, we got a little bit of time here, buddy. What kind of questions have been firing in here? In fact, while you kind of recap, I'm going to answer. Do you set up listing alerts daily, weekly, question mark? Daily. The listing alerts should go daily, and you're going to set it to a degree where hopefully they get something every day. It might not be every day, right? Like, you know, if they were looking in Ashford, Washington, well, not a lot of houses in Ashford, Washington. So I do a really wide range, 200 to 500,000, and just, you know, it might be, I do it daily, but if something didn't come on the market that day, they just wouldn't get something from me. So absolutely daily, Robert, no question about it. On the market reports, we do them every 2 weeks. We send them out every 2 weeks. And the reason we did that is because it replaced our email touch to our sphere and our past clients as part of our sphere and gear. The Ben Kinney teams have a thing called the sphere and gear, where we try to touch our clients 63 times, our past clients in our sphere, 63 times throughout the course of the year. And 24 of those touches are email touches. Today, for us, that's our market reports. And they go 2 times a week, which actually gets us, or every 2 weeks, which actually gets us 26 instead of 24. So great question, Robert. What do you got, Sean?
Okay, so one of the biggest questions is, are there apps for Brivity on iOS and Android?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. There's the Brivity Go app, which is an app for agents to be able to kind of work their leads on the go. Today, you can't set up market reports and listing alerts from the app on the go, but you can reply to text, you can make phone calls, you can log notes, you can send emails to your client, you can do all that, so set reminders and tasks, all that stuff on the go, and for both Android and iOS. By the way, if you have those and you're like, it doesn't seem like it does all the stuff Bob just said it does, just dump the whole thing and reload it from the App Store. We're pushing some updates, like lots of updates, and some of them have been so large in the past that you literally have to dump the app and completely reinstall it. On the consumer side, we are just on the verge of launching the consumer app. Josiah and I were looking at it last week. It's really close, but Ben wants it to be really awesome, so that when your clients get their hands on it, they can kind of really easily use that thing. So it's so close, like I can taste it.
Also getting a lot of questions if Brivity works in Canada.
Yeah, it works in Canada. And in fact, we recently got in a couple of the big feeds, so like in the Korea feed, we recently got sold data, which not a lot of other places have. So yeah, the listing alerts work totally. The auto plan stuff's going to work just fine. There are a couple slivers in Canada still where we don't have pending and sold data. So the market reports, they can still be effective. We basically kind of put stuff into it's either on the market and active, or it's off the market, at which point they'd have to kind of say, well, what happened? Did it sell, and what did it sell for? But we, like in Toronto, in some of the big areas, we do have sold data. So yeah, absolutely. We love Canadians. We're right up there on the border with Canada. You guys are our friends. It works. Robert says, will you put a link on our Brivity search sites for the mobile? Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff like that will happen, right, Robert? Because generally after that app is launched, a lot of your customers, they access the site through the listing alerts, right? So if they're getting listing alerts on their phone and they click to go see the listing alert on the phone, we will start to build tools in there that pop the little, and you guys have seen these other places, right? Like that will pop the little deal up the top, have a better experience, get the app, right? So yeah, we'll start doing that stuff when they're driving to the site on mobile applications. Yeah, Brian says, can you put that latest greatest? Brian, Jolene and I just last week built out the latest greatest 10 days of pain. I think she gave it to all their teams this week. We got to generalize it just a little bit, take out some of that stuff that's very Ben Kinney team specific, like the $20,000, so we're going to generalize a little bit. But yeah, that thing, say in the next week or two, we'll have a new and improved kind of V2019 10 days of pain. Amer, I don't have a deadline on the Brivity home, man. When Ben says this is up to Redfin standard, I mean it's close. We're in May. I'm going to be not very happy if it's not done by the end of May, but I'm also not the developer who's sitting there looking at a million lines of code trying to figure out how he can fix Josiah's little issue with how much spacing's in that spot there, right? So you guys, white glove, okay? If you're sitting there going, gosh, I need to get a lot of market reports and listing alerts set up, and I don't know where the heck I'm going to find the time, we can help you with that. Reach out to support@brivity.com and just say, hey, can somebody tell me about white glove? I'm Bob Stewart. I'm excited you joined me today. You guys have an awesome rest of your week in real estate. On behalf of Sean and Donna and the folks that were behind the scenes answering some of your guys' questions, my name is Bob Stewart. Bye-bye, everybody.